Hi guys, welcome to this one-off video which looks at how best to acquire battle points quickly on Star Wars Battlefront 2. The footage I'm showing today features several clips of me playing Galactic Assault as an ordinary trooper, and this is intended to demonstrate that you can actually get lots of battle points really quickly in this game, provided you follow a few key steps. I've made this video because I know a lot of newer players find it really frustrating that they are unable to acquire enough points to play as heroes or villains on Galactic Assault, and even when they do manage to do this, it is often late in games, which severely limits the time you can spend playing as a hero or a villain. If you do enjoy today's video and you find it useful, please leave me a like and subscribe for more Star Wars Battlefront 2 content in the future. The first thing I absolutely insist all players to do is to play in third person mode. I know that some people prefer first person mode, maybe because that is what they are used to in other shooter games, but honestly there is such an advantage to be had playing third person. Let me explain this in a little more detail. In first person mode, you are effectively looking through the eyes of your character, which means you can only ever see what is directly in front of you. Whereas in third person mode, you view your character from almost like a bird's eye view, meaning you can see more of your surroundings, including what is to the left and right of you. The best way to think of this is to look at the line of vision you have in both modes. Maybe try this out in arcade mode, and hopefully it will be pretty obvious which one is better. In third person mode, you can also look behind cover, and generally speaking, you are far more likely to see incoming enemies. Now don't get me wrong, I also like to play first person on shooters too, but only when everyone has to play first person. You are severely damaging how well you can do if you play in first person mode when most other players are utilising the above advantages that come with playing in third person mode. My next tip is that when you first start playing the game, the first thing you should be doing is finding out which class and which gun suits you best. And I don't mean the one that gives you the best KD, or the one that you most enjoy. I mean the one that you score most points with. It is no good playing the specialist class just because you get 5 kills and only 1 death every game, because that will score you next to no points. As an example, my favourite class is Officer and my favourite gun is the Blurg. I am competent playing as Assault or Heavy, but if I want to score lots of points, I will always stick to what I know. Obviously, you will need some time to experiment. However, once you think you know which class and gun suit you best, stick to using these, at least for a while. Also, you should only spend your precious crafting parts on this class, seeing as you are going to be using it the most. There are lots of gamers who like to take the moral high ground by purposely ignoring guns that are considered overpowered, but just remember, it is not your fault that the game has some balancing issues. Most players will exploit these issues, and if you want to do well, I suggest you do the same. Once you are a more accomplished player, you can then consider trying to be a little bit different, but at first, just stick to maximising how well you can do in games. There is a star card that each class can have, and it is one that you must invest in. It's called Bounty Hunter, and it effectively increases the amount of battle points you earn in matches by a small percentage. As with all star cards, this can be upgraded to Elite, and once you do this, you will have access to a significantly boosted battle point system. Don't craft this card for every class, rather just craft it and then upgrade it for the class you specialise in using. Once you have settled on a specific class, you must also learn how to use that class's abilities to maximise how many points you can earn in a game. For example, as an officer, I am always issuing battle commands which earns me points per every player buffed by the command. It also scores me points when one of these buffed players registers a kill. I always make use of the officer's grenade and turret also to ensure that I am always dealing some form of damage, which again scores me points. As another example, an assault player should be using the scan dart, which when fired, scores the player assist points for every enemy defeated by one of your allies, provided that that enemy is in the scan dart's radius. I'm not going to go through every class and every ability, but you get the point. make sure you maximise your point scoring potential by learning how to effectively harness your class's abilities. Find out which abilities and star cards best maximise this potential by trying different ones in games. Eventually, you will settle on 3 that you should be confident using. So now you have finally settled on your gun, your class, and you know how to use your abilities, let's discuss the best way to score points on the battlefront. The first thing I would say is that you should play extremely aggressively if you want to score points quickly. The first thing I do, with the exception of a couple of maps, is when I start a match, I cover as much ground as possible before hopefully engaging enemies near their spawn point. I find that this often catches people by surprise, and if you do this well enough, you will have the opportunity to take out multiple enemies before they even know what's happening. A big part of this is understanding each of the maps and their respective phases. This only comes with practice, but eventually you should know the best places to go on each map. Usually for me, I will try and go down either one of the edges of the map to ensure I don't get swamped by enemies attacking both sides. Usually competent teammates should have the same idea, but as you can see on the footage, combining an aggressive playstyle with a good knowledge of the map can score you points really quickly, even if you are alone. At first, you might find this strategy ineffective, and I guarantee that this will be the case for newer players, even those with particular expertise in these types of games. But just keep practicing playing really aggressively, and as you get to understand the mechanics of the game more, including how each map is laid out, you will see vast improvements. Honestly, the best Battlefront players, including some you have probably seen on YouTube, are trying to score points as quickly as possible, by engaging enemies before anybody else. As you can see from the footage, I do this in most games. There are some exceptions to this, as you will come to learn. For example, it is really difficult to be aggressive when playing as the First Order on Crate, because of how open the map is. But remember, everyone will be sharing this problem. The best players will find out how to consistently score points in these situations. For example, on this footage, I patiently waited for an opportunity to head into the underground tunnels, and I knew once I had done that I could revert to playing ultra aggressively again. This sort of know-how will only come with practice. I'm sure that at this point a lot of people will say that what I have just spoken about is unlikely to work for less skilled players, and I think you've probably got a point. If you put yourself in this category, it does not mean you should stop being aggressive altogether, because if you do this, you won't score enough points. Rather, you should be aggressive but also understand your limits. For example, try and stick with teammates rather than going on too many solo adventures. You might even find that doing this allows you to play a supporting role alongside superior teammates who play aggressively, thus still allowing you to score lots of points whilst also staying alive. Remember, the battle point system awards lots of points for damage and assists, even if you are not registering many kills, so stick with your teammates and ensure that you are at least dealing damage regularly, even if you are playing slightly more conservatively. And you should still score lots of points. My overall point is, don't get into the mindset that less skilled players can't ever score enough points to get heroes. You just need to play aggressively, but within your limits, and you'll only learn these limits with practice. The most important mechanic to understand on Galactic Assault is the multiplier, that you will see towards the bottom of the centre of the screen. This is effectively a squad multiplier. Whenever you spawn in, this will say 1 times. However, as you and the squad you are in score more points, this will eventually change to 2 times, meaning, obviously, all of your earned battle points from that point will be doubled. If you die, this will reset to 1 times again, and you will then be assigned to a different squad. This means that staying alive is pretty important, but again, if you are not a skilled player, as long as you and the squad are scoring points consistently, once you hit that 2 times multiplier, you will see your points fly up. From this point, you can afford to play slightly more cautiously, and be safe in the knowledge that all of your point scoring actions will be heavily rewarded. You will see on this footage that I make use of an LAAT to score points. This can be another good option for less skilled players. It only costs 400 points, it's very simple to use, and you score points really quickly when using it. There are other maps when some vehicles cost 400 points, so make sure you have a go of these different vehicles, because if you find out that you are really good in one in particular, this is another way to score points quickly. You might find that you play much better in a certain vehicle than you do as a regular trooper, so bear this in mind and experiment a little bit. If your primary aim is to play as heroes, I wouldn't recommend spending your points on more expensive vehicles and units, unless you are exceptionally good in them. From my point of view, if I have already hit 3000 battle points, I'm unlikely to spend that on an enforcer unit because I'm already halfway to a hero. Another really important part of scoring points on Galactic Assault is recognising what the objectives of each map are. This is different on each map, but I'll give you a couple of examples. On Hoth, Crate and Endor, depending on what faction you are playing, there is an AT-AT to hit. Just managing to pick up a rocket will score you points. If you then successfully hit the AT-AT with the rocket, you score more points. And once you or another player have done that, the AT-AT's defences go offline for a short period of time, allowing you to then shoot it with your blaster and earn even more points. This can score you thousands of points in seconds. Also, if you are playing as the faction that has to set bombs or override controls, as long as you are alive when your team does this, you will score around 500 or 1000 points depending on your multiplier. On some maps, the first phase has up to 3 of these objectives, and so if your 2x multiplier is active, you will get 3000 points alone for just being alive when an objective is met. You should take the time to learn about the different objectives there are on the Galactic Assault game mode. Some are more profitable in terms of battle points than others, but again, if you are a less skilled player who struggles to kill lots of players, then you might find that focusing on objectives both makes you a valuable player to your team, whilst also scoring you lots of points. For example, on maps like Hoth and Crate, if you play as the Assault class and you activate Vanguard at the beginning of games, this makes you much quicker, so you can run to a rocket and fire it at the AT-AT before you even see any enemies. The key thing to remember with all of this is the battle point system in Battlefront 2 is pretty complicated. There are many more ways of collecting battle points than the ways I have discussed on the video, so make it your job to find this out. Eventually the penny will drop, as it did with me, and you'll find yourself playing as the hero every game, perhaps even multiple times, but just be patient. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Please leave me a like if you have. Please also leave me a comment and let me know what you think. Also, hit the subscribe button to see more of this type of content in the future.
Grenade deployed! Obedience breeds triumph! Grenade! We will inherit the galaxy!
The Resistance have employed ion disruptors to weaken that walker.
I think. Today we achieved greatness.
ATM-6 approaching the base.